Well, welcome. My name is Dan Ebert. I'm the moderator of the Executive Search Research Consulting Group, and this short presentation today is to highlight the results of our recent survey of associates within retained search, emphasizing those that are candidate developers. We did this survey last fall, October and November, and the results were published in the start of this new year. We had over 200 participants from around the world, but for the most part they were in North America. We believe that's a sufficient sample size for the size or the amount of associates that we believe exist. The Executive Search Roundtable was a precursor to what became the Executive Search Research Consulting Group, and both those organizations serve the community of people that are doing the identification and development of candidates as part that includes those that work in internal search firms, those that work in traditional search firms, and those that work as freelance researchers. So let me run through a few of the details from our respondents. Participants received their results several months ago. This is just sort of a recap for those that really haven't seen it. The base unit, if you will, of being an associate within a search firm would be what you call a candidate developer. And then depending on the size of the organization or the way in which it divides labor, you may also meet people that you would call a name identifier, someone who primarily is focused on finding the would-be candidates, or knowledge managers who have an extra emphasis on data management, library research, business development research, and more thoughts about the general direction of business development of the firm. Here's some quick data for the associates, whatever their title, are educated, they've been in search a while. I would say candidate developers are skewing fairly young right now, but I think that's a function of the fact that just a few years ago many of the associates and firms left the industry, leaving the more senior people in place. One thing you need to remember about associates is that most search firms are fairly small, and as a result there aren't that many associates in an average search firm. Now, the largest of the search firms capture a lot of the attention, and if you're listening and you're one of the associates in a large firm like, say, Heidrick & Struggles or Russell Reynolds, you have to understand that you are an exception to the rule. There are, I believe, about 1,000 retained search firms out there in some form. Most of them look like this: one office, two offices, three offices, no office at all. And the firms themselves don't have many billers or those bringing in the business. So in total, a search firm on average is small all around, which means your average associate is working alone or with just one or two other direct peers. And what that means to you as an associate in a firm is that there aren't that many role models immediately around you to look to as you plan your career. That's part of why we did the survey. Just so we're on the same page, when we're talking about executive search, this respondent slide is consistent with the industry. We're talking about doing work on positions at the vice president level, senior director level, and executive level. And another way to express this is a minimum fee: $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. This is consistent with the industry as a whole. Now, in smaller search firms, usually there is not a division of labor. You have someone that you might call an associate or a senior associate or a junior consultant, and their job is to identify, approach, motivate interest for candidates. In larger firms, the associates will be more likely to be dedicated to particular partners, or at least work with a short list on a regular basis. In a small firm, very often an associate is working with whoever needs the help. And the work that comes to be divided out as specialty work, such as name identification or knowledge management, in a large firm there can be a specialized person. In a smaller firm there won't be one. It'll be purchased as a freelance, or they'll do without. So when we asked associates, and in particular candidate developers, what their career aspirations were, it really should come as no surprise that most of them pointed to becoming a partner or a principal or whatever the title was in their firm that described being in charge of the search and bringing in business. Now, we have to say that most candidate developers don't have many other examples to follow. But that's the primary focus of most candidate developers, and as we asked some questions about what they were interested in, a lot of their responses reflected that, such as, what skills do you think are most important, or what would you like to improve? The majority of candidate developers were emphasizing sales skills, leveraging social media. But I need to add that in this age of 2013, you can ask just about anybody if they think leveraging social media is important, and they will say yes, because it is important. But the point is that sales skills, interpersonal skills, and finding new ways to reach out to people are what candidate developers are generally interested in. We also asked about lifestyle, essentially, one's hours. Candidate developers put a fair amount of work in. For the most part, a candidate developer, whether they're coming in early and staying late, that's the primary window of time that they work. A lot of people in search put a lot of time in, so we just decided to ask, are they working after they eat dinner? And what we found is that most candidate developers stay in the office and work, then go home and call it a day. Other roles, like knowledge managers, you'll find that they spend time in the evening going through the internet and doing additional research. Here's an important slide if you're thinking about your career as a candidate developer. Most candidate developers are carrying about 5 active searches. The other associates in a firm, such as a name identifier, often carry more searches because well, they fall into 2 camps. Either there's a few searches, they're done quickly and they're out of the project, or they remain on the project continuing to add. So depending on the person, they'll either report a few searches or a lot of searches. But for the most part, candidate developers are very actively involved in the search, so there's sort of a limit on how many they can work on at one time, and the average was 5.5, I believe. Now, here's a slide probably most people are interested in. This is, we asked about compensation. Your average candidate developer is making between about 70 and about 110 on a base salary. Most candidate developers are expecting a bonus, and it's how it's calculated is a mix, really, a combination of the number of searches that are being closed, some discretionary judgment from a manager or an office manager or managing director, and the performance of the company as a whole. The bonus is generally paid out annually. The exception to that rule would be semi-annually. And as a percentage of salary, candidate developer bonuses top out at about 30%. With the average, that's the potential, and the average candidate developer is not getting that whole 30%. So there's a couple of takeaways, and here's one of them: specialization. We looked at if a candidate developer specialized or claimed an expertise in a particular function or industry, and then tried to correlate that to compensation. What we found was there is a correlation between higher compensation as a candidate developer to specialization, particularly by industry. But there is not a correlation of the industry to the compensation. In other words, it doesn't matter what you specialize in, it's just important that you specialize. But as this slide shows you very clearly, Specializing doesn't necessarily make you more money, it just puts you on the higher side of the range of what candidate developers report. It's pretty obvious. As low as the 25th percentile, people are making more money when they specialize. So what is a specialty? Generally, it's saying that you work in a particular industry practice. And this really shouldn't come as a surprise. The whole idea of search is that you know your way around better and better, and you know more and more people, and you have better judgment. And if you're moving across multiple industries at the back and forth, it's going to be harder to sustain knowledge. The other issue is, well, this slide shows it all. We asked associates in search firms about the software that they use to organize their notes. The categories were working in software designed for retained search, for general recruiting, or general CRM. The slide shows just how many of us are working in software designed for search, which means it's set up to note relationships, contextual information, and manage relationships over time. So if you're looking at developing your career as a candidate developer, or for that matter any associate in any firm, the important parts of the information are that, not necessarily the facts, such as phone numbers. That's important. Knowing who the companies are, that is certainly important, but that's baseline. The greater value that where you are contributing to the firm comes with relationship data, notation about exchanges with people, managing the relationship you have with people. As you attend to that more and more, and you specialize, that makes you more valuable and puts you in the higher end of the compensation for a candidate developer. So that's a quick overview of the results that participants received early this year. We'll be repeating this survey again in 2013 with some greater detail, particularly around specialization. Just a quick recap, the Executive Search Research Consulting Group really it's primarily managed through LinkedIn, and the link is here for you to find. I invite you to join us. We do a series of in-person get-togethers over a cocktail in the evening. It's a good social vehicle for those that are looking for peers to network with. My firm is Strategic Research Solutions, which specializes in helping search firms through name identification and candidate development services. There will also be some additional presentations that are spin-offs from this research that we did in the survey about hiring and managing associates, about leveraging contracted research, and about planning your career as an associate within a search firm. So thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you at one of our mixers soon.